There has been such phenomenal interest in this conversation around the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is incredibly encouraging for us. And then, of course, we're doing it in the context of the Henley alumni, which is just this incredible opportunity of a community. And here to tell us a little bit more of how we want to, let's say, use this community as a think tank, or let's say, start a fire, perhaps, in this space, is Emmanuel Akoto. Emmanuel Afouan, and over to you to tell us more about how we want to leverage this community.
Yeah, thank you very much, Louise. As you may all be aware, the Henley alumni chapters in Africa are growing, and we are improving our connectivity. Honestly, that should lead to business and socialization. And we have Barry and the team to thank for this, the growing Henley alumni chapters in Africa. We also now have the Africa Connected platform, which has been the key enabler of this growth and connectivity. This platform is now on Henley Live as well as a private group. It all started with a virtual marketplace idea, a virtual marketplace where alumni can interact as individuals and groups for business and socialization. This private group can be found in the group section of Henley Live. So alumni who are not already members of this group are encouraged to join this group. Among other things, you will find in the group the previous recordings of the sessions on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. So I will personally encourage all of us, those who are not yet in the group, to join Henley Live and then move on into Africa Connected platform. Now, the growth and connectivity is driven in part by the trust that normally exists among alumni. And together with the skills and experience that alumni possess, we are well placed to seize the immense opportunities that are being created by the coming into operation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Alumni can collaborate to develop business solutions and to do business, taking advantage of these opportunities. Actually, our dream as a group is to catalyze a process that will expose value addition opportunities across the continent and also lead to African products on shelves in African countries. African products on shelves in African countries is the vision. That's what we want to see in the long term. I must add that this also includes services, not just products and services. So using the Africa Connected platform, we can leverage our connectivity, businesses that alumni are operating in and representing to catalyze the process of value addition and African products on shelves in African countries. It would be so nice if we can take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and play our parts in it coming to fruition. So these sessions, which we've had at least one in the past, will help us to learn more and understand the opportunities and the challenges. So I'm looking forward with this dream that we have. I'm looking forward anxiously and to the discussions of today, get everybody on board. And as Louis said, let's have a think tank that can actually explore these opportunities and confront the challenges so that we can bring our connectivity and growth can be meaningful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Emmanuel is the head of our alumni chapter in the wonderful Ghana, and he told me yesterday that thank you in Ewe is up there. So up there, Emmanuel. You'll hear more from Emmanuel later. In the meantime, we'll leave you to solve the riddle of Emmanuel's background. My name is Louise Classen. I am an executive fellow with Henley. I am also with NextPlay, and our focus is on the African Continental Free Trade Area. And this initiative is by Africans for Africans, and that means absolutely everything. And I love what you said, Emmanuel, that this focus, the focus of this forum, this think tank, is on making sure that we get African products on African shelves, or shelves in African countries at least. So let's figure out how to do that together, and that's what we want to do with the session today. We have with us today our very, very, very favorite dean, our only dean, but also our very favorite dean, Professor John Foster-Bedley. So John, please can I hand over to you for a moment?
Yes, you certainly can. I'm going to put on my uniform background for Henley. There we are, rather than my cold winter one. Thank you very much, Louise and Mamo and the whole team doing this, and for that introduction, Manuel, absolutely marvelous. I just wanted to welcome you, or just greet you really on behalf of Henley Business School in Africa anyway. We're working very closely with our UK colleagues, with Jean-Pierre Choulet and with John Board, who's the dean I report into, and our other colleagues. And it's fascinating to see the increasing interest and energy around building activities and connections across Africa from Henley. Being an Henley alumnus is something that we want to make even more interesting and more valuable. So Barry is working with Mamo on building up the South African alumni community, which has got thousands of people, actually, literally we haven't found yet, because we're doing a lot of, we had over 4,000 students last year on our executive program. So all of those can be alumni. So there is a great opportunity of building this up. But however, what we don't want is an imbalance between South Africa and Africa as a whole. So I'm very keen to build this up. I'd like to congratulate you on this initiative, because the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a significant change. I personally worked in Africa, other parts of Africa and South Africa for a long time. I spent years selling airliners in Africa and the Middle East, and I traveled much time in 21 trips to Ghana, to Lagos, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Mali, all the countries, DRC and Gabon and Congo Brazza. So I love the areas all across Africa. So I'm very keen that we build this opportunity. I think the thing for me that's really important is that we stand really firm about developing of Africa and stop, if anyone's got that, we've got to be as good as the West mentality in their head, then please get rid of it. It's just such a waste of time and effort. We're so capable here. Our students here do as well as the students from Germany and France and Malaysia and Finland in blind assessed exams. Nobody knows who they are. And so we've got all the talent we want. I think now's the time to come together and really support these initiatives. I would like to offer some scholarships as well into the African community for the things like postgrad diploma. We actually have a postgrad diploma in African business coming up in a couple of weeks. And I can offer you 3 or maybe even 4 50% seats on that for people who want to do that at half price. So it's up to you. And I'll even offer 1 free seat for somebody who brings another scholarship person along, as long as we get over 4 of them. So there's a bit of a challenge for you. And there are more special offers hiding in the wings. So let's energize all this, and we can run competitions. You want to do something in your chapters to get people involved, we'll throw a scholarship in. You can do virtually, all sorts of stuff. And let's have some fun, and let's make this thing rock. So thank you very much. Over and out. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you for the energy, John. That's phenomenal, and appreciate it so much. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a closer look at value chains across this continent of ours. And certainly building these Pan-African value chains is such a core objective of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Before we get into that though, what I would love to do is to ask you to introduce yourself to us. And if you could do that in the chat, that would be fantastic. Tell us who you are, tell us where you're from, and feel free to share your LinkedIn profile details there. And let's link up with each other. Let's make deeper connections. If you've not yet connected with everybody on this forum, and today is the opportunity to do that. Now, the person that we have with us today that is going to help us take a closer look at these value chains and these Pan-African value chains and an approach to these Pan-African value chains is Francois Ameguide, my partner in crime. Francois is a specialist in private equity. He is in business development strategy as well as in impact investing. He has been living in South Africa for a while, but he's originally from Yaoundé in Cameroon. Francois Ameguide, so nice to have you with us. Bienvenue.
Merci Louise, toujours un plaisir.
Ah, merci.
Toujours un plaisir, merci.
Over to you. Please share with us.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here today. It's always a pleasure to engage with like-minded people on topics relating to Africa development, economic development in Africa, and with all the noble goals we have in line with the African Union Agenda 2063, you know, the Africa we want, where we want to end poverty. And I think the private sectors, the economy in particular, play quite a significant role in that regard. So it's with great pleasure today that I'd like to stimulate conversation on a topic that is vitally important when we talk about economic development, growth, and prosperity on the continent of Africa, and that would be value chains, global value chains, regional value chains, the concept of value chain and the relevance in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Area and Agenda 2063. But before I do that, I would obviously like to give some context in terms of where does it all fit in the whole African Continental Free Trade Area discourse. Where does it fit in? And to do that, I'd like to share some slides. If you would just bear with me. Yeah, we're going to talk about value chains. The word analysis might be misleading. It's more around having a sense as to where we are as African when it comes to global value chains, right? And given the importance of value chains in wealth creations globally, what are some of the thoughts we can begin to propose to change the current situation when it comes to value chains in Africa? But let's take a step back. I've had the privilege of doing some studying around the African Continental Free Trade Area. I see myself as an eternal learner. Learning never ends for me. But it's important to know that there is obviously a background to trade, right? And trade and also regional integration. And what I like about the work Balassa did in 1961 is he basically categorizes economic integration into five stages, right? On the vertical axis, you have the level of integration. On the horizontal axis, you have the level of complexity. And based on this research, the lowest level of integration is free trade, right? Where we talk about reduction of traffic. And he contends that ultimately one should move up in terms of complexity and level of integrity, right? And the highest level of economic integration is obviously a political union, which I don't think at this point in time we have any example to speak of, right? What the ambition for the Abuja Treaty in 1991 was essentially for Africa to move from the lowest level of economic integration to one of the highest level of economic integration, being the economic union, right? And in that regard, the Abuja Treaty envisaged a monetary union, a single currency, and an African central bank. That's really what gave rise to the African Continental Free Trade Area. So, and to achieve those objectives and to get to that, to move up that ladder from being a free trade area to being an economic union, there are a number of protocols that have been agreed, such as free movement of people, for example, and the like. So those protocols have been signed to ensure that we can actually move up the ladder when it comes to a full or a greater economic integration on the continent of Africa. And why are we talking about regional integration? Why is it important for us to talk about regional integration? In other words, trade across Africa. There is extant literature on the subject, to support the thesis that trade leads to economic growth, which in turn leads to poverty reduction, right? The empirical evidence that have demonstrated it. And if you look at this chart, for example, you can see that the countries that have been trading, and here you're looking at the average annual change in merchandise exports as a percentage of GDP on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical axis, and on the horizontal axis, you have the annual change in GDP. You see that a country like South Korea, for me, it's one of the countries I love to talk about. I mean, they went from, a couple of years ago, if you look at the early 70s, for example, they were below countries like Uganda, and if you look at the bottom of the chart, right? But over a number of years, they've realized that by improving their trade, it will actually help them create wealth and grow the economy. So you can see that the level of trade as a percentage of GDP relates positively to the growth in GDP. So there is a positive correlation between the two, right? So the slope is upward trending. And that's quite important, and it has ramifications for us as an African continent. As you can see, many African countries in blue are grouped where there is relatively low level of export and also low level of GDP and GDP growth. And that speaks to one thing, which one could refer to as the burning platform. Africa's share of world export is very, very low, 2.5% in 2018, lower than the share to global GDP. And that should really concern us all. That should concern us all. And that's not sustainable. And I think those are some of the motivations for a greater a greater continental integration when it comes to trade and commerce in Africa. And one of the key instruments that has been signed under the African Continental Free Trade Area is the AU Action Plan on Boosting Intra-African Trade, which was adopted in 2012. The whole idea with the BIT is to ensure that all the current free trade area initiatives are consolidated into one, right, to form the African Free Trade Area. That's the main objective of boosting intra-Africa trade. Obviously, there will be kind of a ripple effect in terms of that happening. So now let's talk about the African Continental Free Trade Area and the value chain. And I'm basing this slide on some research done by OECD in 2019, right? Where they found that the traditional view of trade, which is normally producing goods and services inshore, right, end to end, and then exporting them, only represent 30% of global trade. And bear in mind that according to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the current trade figure, global trade figure, stands at around $6.6 trillion, right? But according to this research as well, in reality, 70% international trade actually involve global value chain, right? Where the sourcing of raw material, services, and component and part made elsewhere in the world come together to manufacture a good or to assemble a good that is then sold globally, right? And that mode of trade represents 70% of global trade, and that's quite significant, right? And the fact that we record such a low level of trade on the African continent means that we're not enjoying the benefits of this trend, right? That's why it's critical to talk about global value chains, right? And by global value chain, one can also infer regional value chains. And the beauty about global value chain is that African countries at all levels of development can benefit from engaging in global and regional value chains, as I will explain further down. I love this quote from Michael Ferrantino, who is the lead economist at the World Bank. He said, a better understanding of global value chains is essential for developing strategies to harness international trade for social and economic and social upgrading and rising standard of living. So they've done a lot of work as economists at the World Bank to understand that there is a link between global value chain and economic development. And it's quite fundamental to what we are talking to today. Furthermore, let's now talk about value chains. If you look at a very simple example, one industry, right? An ice cream manufacturer who will procure dairy product from a farmer as an input product and sugar from a sugar processor and then additive product from an additive producer to make his ice cream. In that first process of the value chain, of the value chain, there are obviously margins, right, that can be realized by all parties. Now, the ice cream manufacturer sells the ice cream to a food service distributor and is able to extract 25% margin. And likewise, the food distributor will sell the ice cream to the grocer and extract a margin. So everyone along the value chain will benefit from that process, right? Now, if you were to look at it from a continental, on a continental level perspective, right? Assuming that the dairy farmer was in a different country, the sugar provider was in another region of the continent, how would that stimulate and how the economy grows on the continent of Africa? But we can talk more about it as we go on. So, also important to note is that global value chains for production and goods and services take place by breaking up the production process in small parts, which take place in a different country, right? And this model of division of labor has become quite common in today's business environment across the world. A cell phone made in China will be said made in China, but it's sold in the United States and in Europe. But the screen will probably come from Japan. The processing board will probably come from Taiwan, and the battery will probably come somewhere from the Philippines. And that's the nature of trade today. It's important for us to understand that. And the global value chain activities are often referred to trading tasks or sizing up value chain or production fragmentation, just to speak to the fact that you can actually procure components, manufactured components from different parts of the world, right? And these global value chains are organized around a network of relationship and contracts to produce that good or provide that service, as the case may be, right? I had a privilege of visiting the Boeing manufacturing plant in the United States. And it was quite fascinating to see how the planes are assembled with thousands of components, and most of which are not actually made in the United States of America, right? And it's what one of the previous head of the World Trade Organization, Lamy, referred to as made in the world. So today things are made in the world, right? And this has far-reaching implications for Africa as a continent, as we're trying to kind of join this movement of global value chains. So again, just to strengthen the case for global value chain, they're not just limited to goods, right? Activities such as R&D, design, assembly, marketing, that all contribute to making the product or to selling the product to the end user are all part of the value chain, right? And they can be located in different countries. So it's possible for a country, right, a poorer country or a country wanting to get involved in the global value chain to do one task or a few tasks, provided that they can produce them efficiently at a lower cost. Because at the end of the day, it's a margins game, right? And it wouldn't be inconceivable, right, to think that auto car manufacturers or manufacturers in South Africa can actually access some of the parts from other countries across the continent of Africa. If you go to the BMW assembly plant in Roseland, they can procure chairs, maybe chairs made in Zambia, for example, if the leather in Zambia is good, and Zambians can actually make good leather seats for vehicle, for example. Those are some of the benefits that global value chains presents, or in the case of Africa, regional value chains. So we need to consider other industries on the continent, right? The garment industry, for example. What are some of the value chain activities that can be located in different countries on the continent of Africa, such as cutting the fabric, sewing the fabric, for example, and then sending them to the assembly, the lead manufacturer, right? So these are some of the thoughts we need to begin to kind of entertain as we look to take advantage of these benefits offered by global value chains. So my question to you today is, how do we unlock business opportunities through global value chains and regional value chains participation under the African Continental Free Trade Area? And this question is relevant because lead firms are likely to own every step of the value chain or the value process around the world. That's a fact. It's been a growing trend for the past decades. But we've been sleeping as Africans. So there's so many opportunities along value chains, right? And Africa has a relatively low labor cost. That's a fact. So with these two factors combined, how do we unlock business opportunities through global value chains participation under the African Continental Free Trade Area? That's a question to ponder on. Your thought. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Francois. So I think we may have time for one or two questions before I take you into the next segment. We want to embroider this particular question and come back to Manuel Apoto, and of course you'd have seen his very enticing background. But before you do, just perhaps to hear if there are one or two questions, please just raise your hand or pop your question into the chat, and we'll see if we have an opportunity to engage on one or two questions before we move on to the next segment. The next segment is a short conversation around chocolate, which I think for most of us is an interesting one. And in this particular case, I want you to think about where you get your chocolate from and what is your favorite chocolate. And if you are having that particular day where chocolate is going to be the thing that soothes your soul, then where do you think that chocolate would originate from? So keep that question in mind. First, I'm going to come over to you, James. James, what is your thought? What is your question? Please share with us.
I was wondering where Francois sees it mainly being goods coming to Africa for assembly and adding on into the final thing, or Africa exporting the parts in the value chain through to another country.
Thank you. Francois, how do you see us participating in these global value chains that are fragmented?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm still on. Can you hear me,
Yes,
Louise?
I can hear
My
you, and I can
microphone
hear
is on.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I think the opportunity mainly lies around the fact that South Africa Africa as a continent can actually become can become both, right? Product can be assembled here, right? And that we in that way we can actually extract value from what is called, often referred to, domestic value chains. So we can do that, but at the same time as well, it's not inconceivable for us to manufacture or to make, right, input product that can be used elsewhere in the world. And that way we will actually be benefiting with both approaches, right? Whether, in my view, I think our level of participation when it comes to global value chains is very low. Is very low. And if we have the opportunity to either be an assembly hub, right, for lead firms, or being suppliers of parts to the world, to the rest of the world, and to Africa, in my view, is actually a win-win situation. I don't know if I've answered your question, James.
I was actually asking which do you think is actually going to make traction first? You've obviously got companies like BMW that import parts, assemble them into the car and then export them again. But that's great. But I mean, most of the people on the session today, I think, aren't looking at multinationals like that. We're looking at smaller, medium, large size companies that can make an impact on there rather than, you know, being one of multiple manufacturing plants around the world.
Thank you, James.
Sorry, Louise?
No, I said thank you, James. Do you want to add? Do you want to add to that comment? Shall I move on to the next question?
For me, I think it probably the approach where we manufacture input products, right, that can be used in the global value chain is probably the lowest hanging fruit. Instead of because if one looks at assembling product locally, that comes with some requirements in terms of having the right infrastructure in place, for example. Whereas a country like, say, I'm talking about Zambia, right, that might have a good leather industry, right? It's not impossible for them to say we are going to become the leather manufacturing hub for the motor vehicle industry or the motor vehicle value chain globally, both continentally and globally. And in my view, that's easier than to become, for example, a regional hub for assembling product on the continent. So to answer your question, that would probably be my approach, to look at ways in which we can actually provide supply input product to global value chains, both in Africa and globally.
Thank you, Francois.
Yeah, Louise, can I add a word?
Yes.
Yeah, if you look across the African continent, what Francois talked about, for example, the Boeing 707. I mean, we don't have any such thing on the African continent at the moment. So in some ways, we can imagine that there are huge opportunities, but there's nothing at the moment. So in some ways, we are a state of exploring what is possible. Sitting here in Accra, Francois just mentioned about leather expertise in Uganda. Most people in Ghana here are not even aware. So I think we are going to have to start exploring, trying to understand what is on the continent, around the continent first.
Thank you very much. I also wonder if it isn't it's less about inbound and outbound and more about imagining almost a circle on this continent. When you stand at Durban Port, which really in the first instance dwarfs you because it is a land of giants, they're giant equipment, giant ships, you get a very real sense of vehicles and motor parts making their way out of the country onto these massive vehicle container ships. And then at the same time, you see these offloads of these really big vehicles, mining vehicles, through to industrial equipment, through to, you know, sedans and passenger vehicles coming into the country together with parts. So it's almost like two-way traffic. And I wonder if it isn't either or. I wonder if that's not too binary a way to think about this. I think it's a question of velocity and how we contribute in a sense to the velocity of goods and investment moving through our continent, but in a circular way through our continent, rather in an inward and outward direction as has traditionally been the case. And as the continent really was built for. This continent was built together with infrastructure to move extractives out and to move finished goods in. And that's the thing that we're trying to change. Thank you. Matla, over to you for a question. And then I'm going to move us on into another very interesting segment. Thank you.
Hello, good day, everybody.
Thank you.
My contribution is this: to actually realize the value chain or the global value chain. Or hello, good day, everyone.
Yeah, go ahead. You can hear you, Matla.
All right. My contribution is that probably we should look into having one unitary currency. I know it's a very touchy issue because it means other people ought to forfeit their value, the current currency value and all that. But if we can push that, it will mean that Africa, like we are saying after, Africa would probably enjoy, or African states or the region will enjoy better working relations if we don't have the currency issue as a barring issue. Thank you.
Thank you. It's part of the vision in the future, isn't it, Francois? I mean, we are looking at a monetary union in some ways, and there's some of the regional economic communities that are looking, and in fact, acting in some ways as monetary communities with monetary unions.
No, I mean, it's absolutely that was a vision with the Abuja Treaty to become a common monetary union. But before we get to that, obviously, you know, we need to begin to look at ways. I mean, to Emmanuel's point, right? How many people are even aware of the fact that there are opportunities to be unlocked when it comes to regional value chains across the continent of Africa, right? Is there an intentional industrial policy? Are there industrial policies in place, right, from African governments to think through these issues? Therein lies the question. And to what extent do we need to educate the private sector around those issues, right? Because it has been proven to work globally. How come we're not part of this? We're not part of this movement. How come we're not part of this revolution? And something that it means that either our policies have not intentionally targeted value chains as economic imperative, or that people don't even know, you know, the extent to which they can actually benefit the African economies. So there is work to be done in that regard. A lot of work to be done in that regard. But to the point on the currency as well, I mean, if you look at Asia, right, they don't share the same currency. Right? They don't share the same currency. And if you look at the electronic regional value chains in Asia, right, they trade seamlessly across borders, but they don't share the same currency. So I want us to move away from kind of identifying these so-called stumbling blocks that are preventing us from taking strides forwards towards realizing, right, some of the benefits, undisputable benefits of value chains, global value chains and regional value chains.
Thank you, Francois.
Just food for thought.
Thank you very much. I note the questions in the chat, but for a moment, I'm going to digress. I want us to make this really practical. So let's play into a what-if scenario. And that what-if scenario has to do with chocolate, as I mentioned earlier. And Emmanuel, I'm going over to you again. Let's talk about Ghanaian chocolate. And let's talk about the possibilities that it holds for us. Over to you.
Yeah, Louise, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about the Ghana chocolate. It's just an example of what we are dreaming about, African products on shelves in African countries. So I'll talk a little bit about Ghana chocolate, and you can imagine how we can have this on shelves all over your countries, those participating. As you may know, Africa has led the world in cocoa production for more than a century now. And Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are key players in this industry. Actually, Ghana has been the bulk industry leader for cocoa quality. I mean, we are known to export or produce or sell very high quality cocoa beans. This has established a respect for the quality of cocoa that comes from Ghana. But largely, we remain primary cocoa exporters. So there is great opportunity that we can build on this respect that we have and introduce value addition activities. As you know, one of Africa's much loved cash crop is the cocoa. And one of the world's most treasured traits is chocolate. However, if you come to Ghana, less than 20% of Ghana's cocoa is processed in country, either for local consumption or semi-processed for exports. But I'm happy to say that in recent years, many entrepreneurs and experts in the industry and the other stakeholders, I mean the government in particular, have started venturing into this area. How can we process more of Ghana's cocoa? The Ghana chocolate is one of the well-known products of in-country processing of cocoa. You can see behind me some pictures of the Ghana chocolate. Mamo, if you can just show us some more pictures of the Ghana chocolate, that would be fine.
Yeah, I've put them in the chat.
Thank you. We're sending each of you your Ghana chocolate via the chat, which you can download on your side and sample, of course. So,
okay. So you can see there are various forms of it. Actually, the pictures show you the cocoa fruits as is on the plants on the farms, and then the manual processing of those fruits, and shows pictures of the chocolates. In Ghana, a box of 20 pieces of 50 grams each of the King's Bite milk chocolate sells for about $12. Yeah, these the fruits on a tray, and you can see processing, manual processing, and this picture here shows the King's Bite. This one is showing some of the cocoa. Very interesting process. So Ghana chocolates on shelves in countries across Africa, what does it mean? It means increase in consumption of the chocolate. And if there is increase in consumption of the chocolate, then know that this will promote many value addition activities across the continent, because that means we have to produce more of it. And many aspects of this production can be done in various countries. And maybe eventually, more than 80% of Ghana's cocoa will be processed here on the African continent into chocolates and many other cocoa products. So if we are looking at this as an example of a product that is being produced in Africa already, how can we have this on shelves in all African countries? Louise.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank you,
that's it.
Emmanuel. So we have got 15 minutes left in the session, and what we would like to ask you to do, and I have noted some of the discussion points in our chat, is we'd like to also, for the sake of networking and connection and the start of this think tank process that we're envisioning this community growing into, we'd like to allocate you to breakout rooms with 3 or 4 of your colleagues on this particular chat. And Mamo, I think if we make those groups of 5, I think that would work really well. And then put your imagination to what you believe is needed. To go back to that question that we started with, African products on shelves in African supermarkets, African markets across the continent. What do you think is needed to get Ghanaian chocolates onto African supermarket shelves throughout this continent for it to become a product of choice? So if you can put your thoughts to that question for a little while with some of your colleagues, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and share some thoughts on that. And we have some other thoughts that some other questions that we've kept marked in the chat, and then we'll use that as a closeout discussion for this particular session. Thank you very much. Let's do that. Please feel free to join us in the breakout room for conversation. It will be a short discussion, and then we'll bring you back. Thank you. We want to be the people that take this thing forward and that solve for these very difficult challenges that so very eruditely putting forward. I'm putting something in the chat for you, my thoughts on your thoughts, but I think we're going to play out with some thoughts from your side. So if you have a thought on this question, so we want to take Ghanaian chocolate, we want to edify it, we want to value add it on this particular continent, and what's more, we want, when people reach for a slab of chocolate on a shelf anywhere in this continent, their first choice must be that Ghana chocolate. How do we make that happen? Please share with us your thoughts. You can do it in the chat. Please raise your hand. Let's see who's got some ideas. We'd like to start us off. Anybody? James, go for it.
We decided that the gap was marketing. It wasn't value chain that we've been talking about. You've actually got to tell people that it's there. Maybe picking up on what Francois was saying, that needs to be made in Africa as a slogan and so forth, rather than made in the world, made in Africa. But I think there's still a lot of regional countries that are trying to say made in South Africa or made in Kenya. So that may be more difficult.
How do we get people to know about the fact that we've got this incredible resource right here on this continent?
Marketing. I mean, there seems no reason why Ghanaian chocolate can't be being sold at the moment. But you're right, I've never heard of it.
There we go. And it is a beautiful thing. Patience, over to you. What are your thoughts?
So related to James's comments, maybe a twist on the marketing thing, and it's a perception thing. It's giving people the why. Because they could, I'm South African, there could be a very delicious chocolate that says made in South Africa. It could even be made in the suburb that I was born in, but I won't buy it because I haven't been given the reason why it's better than Swiss chocolate. So I think there's a lot of kind of hard graft at giving people the cause, the reason to then shift behavior. And yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I love it, but we've got storytellers in this community. Kieran, didn't you say that you are like a serious storyteller? It's like, how do we get into those stories? How do we make that deep connection? I love it. Sia, so nice to have you. Welcome.
Hi, Louise. Hi, everyone. I think in our chat room, we had a conversation about something completely different, but I'll try and respond specifically to the chocolate. I think specifically, just not even looking at Africa, buying local in South Africa is still not an easy thing to do. I don't know if you're not intentional about. I recently found out there's an app, which I think we're not leveraging maybe so much on technology to push these things, that you can actually have an app where you first look which Black businesses are selling such or local businesses are selling such products before you go and buy the international or outside. So if something like that, if you can maybe leverage in addition to the comment about marketing to James. So maybe use technology to make sure that people know what options are there before you go and get the external, the ones that are made outside of the country, maybe.
I feel like we're 20% towards a plan here. Thank you very much, Sia. Henry, your thoughts? Henry, we've got you on mute at the moment.
All right. Okay. Great. Fantastic. Yes. Thank you so much for the input. Right. The issue of local beneficiation, I regard it as an aspect, that is of significant importance. If we have got manufacturing companies that do extract raw materials locally, and then predominantly the bulk of production should be done locally, and exports should be more in the form of processed materials, processed goods that are marketable on the global scale. So for me, ultimately, value chain can be impactful on the economy if we take seriously, if government could come up with a better regulation, of manufacturing and production being done locally, such that when marketing is being conducted, both the local economy and the international markets, can enjoy products that are uniquely made, in South Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, or the broader African continent, as a whole. That's my thought. So within our group as well, what stood up most was the issue of marketing, and what the African Free Continental Trade Agreement would do for Africa, in terms of its benefits. So that's why I am particularly in favor of the issue of local production, local beneficiation, and finished products being marketable on the global scale, on the international markets. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you very much. And we've reached the top of the hour, which means Kieran, I see you, Matla, I see you, Ernestina, I see you, and then we have some really, really interesting comments in the chat as well. So what I'm going to ask of you is 2 more minutes of your time. Kieran, can you do 30 seconds? Matla, can you do 30 seconds? And Ernestina, can you do 30 seconds? And then I'm going to wrap us up with a huge thank you for your wonderful participation today. Kieran, 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll keep mine short, guys. Thank you. Great chat. To sum it up as quickly as possible, I think the scars of our past on the continent is what's going to inhibit us from being able to take small steps and strides towards realizing what seems like something that's really insurmountable. And I think big things start small, and what we need to do is just start right now. There are too many problems for us to look at it, and I think we just need to start right now. Do more research, and let's start.
Yeah, this is it. These are the steps. Thank you, Kieran. And you're the storyteller. You have to tell the stories that galvanize those steps. Matla, 30 seconds, please. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Louise. I am of the thought that in my group we presented an array of suggestions that probably speaks to us being more connected in terms of what we bring to the pot of the after. We spoke a lot on the policy misalignment. What South Africa is saying internally, as in the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning or whatsoever, is different from what we are doing here in Botswana or what is happening in Zimbabwe. So we ought to be connected. Let me just pause there.
Yes. Thank you. Let's make that so. Ernestina, 30 seconds. Over to you. Thank you, Matla.
In my group, what we talked about were 2 key things. A lot of history that we carry, a lot of baggage. There's a lot of north-south trade, but no east-west trade. That is part of the problem. So we've been trading with our European partners, American, and now Chinese, but not on the continent. So for example, Ghana chocolate needs dairy products, milk. Why don't we go to Kenya for milk? And then when we start opening up the East-West trade channels, we also need to look very carefully about branding and marketing. As the first speaker said, marketing and branding. These are the two key things we are talking about, them branding, marketing, and East-West trade.
I love it. I love it. I love this community. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for your contribution today. Ugresparan, I saw your comment earlier. I mean, I'm very interested in how we make this continent of ours an internal tourism market. How do we do that? Stimulate African tourism. We're already looking at how this continent is opening up to each other from an open visa perspective. Francois, thank you so much, my partner in crime, for your contribution today. Fantastic to partner with you. Emmanuel, phenomenal. Thank you. Let's. I don't think that should be the end of the topic conversation. Do you? I think that's the beginning. And then Barry, to you, and Mamadisa, to you. Thank you so much for facilitating this forum and this community, and for your contributions to making it happen. To all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. This can be an incredibly dynamic space. I think it already is. Have a phenomenal week.